Welcome to the Good Karma Sport Fishing Podcast. I'm your host, Captain Ryan Van Fleet. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. So I took a little break. We were in Fort Myers Beach for Memorial Day weekend. Yes, I missed the mutton spawn. So I hope everybody had a really good Memorial Day weekend. And it looked like the fishing was really good for people, which is great because a lot of people have not been able to enjoy a nice weekend of fishing where the moon's right. The fishing's fairly easy. Now the trick is like being at the right place at the right time. And I still remember the first mutton spawn that I fished, and it was with Melinda. So at that time, I couldn't afford to buy weights. So, and I couldn't afford, to go fishing personally, to be honest with you guys. And I couldn't afford weights. So I was at that time I was doing a lot of reef. I still do a lot of reef fishing because I really love it. But I had some really good speedos in the fridge. I always kept speedos in there no matter what. And I just went and grabbed Melinda one night and I was like, hey, why don't we got a little bit of gas in the boat. Why don't we run out to the reef and fish the mutton spawn? And we went out about 3 o'clock. I still remember this, and I was, like I said, I didn't have any weights, and all I did was make my special chum ball mix that I was still working on at the time to make it lethal. And I grabbed some speedos and some dead bonito, and we went out. We set up in about 75 foot, and I started dropping chum balls. And Melinda's like she did some flatlining for yellowtail because she really loves the yellowtail fish when she does come, because it's just a very active sport for her, and she's really good at it when she gets into the group. So, but anyway, so I dropped the chum balls and I caught some beautiful mutton snappers. I still have some great pictures from that night that I'll cherish forever. And I ended up catching a really nice big black grouper, and the muttons that I caught were gorgeous. So I had one block of chum because I needed to save the chum for my charters, and I didn't want to like overdo it. And I caught 5 beautiful mutton snappers and my black grouper, and then I came home. And what was so great is I didn't have any fishing spots. I just went out and I looked at the bottom. I said, well, this looks really good. I studied the charts, and that's how I did it. I didn't have any fishing spots. I just went out, looked at the charts, studied the bottom, figured out where I was going to set up that night. I had no idea whether I was going to catch muttons or not. No clue. At that time, I didn't know a damn thing about targeting mutton snappers, aka the red porgy, the pink porgy. If you don't know what that is, you better follow my Instagram because it's just going to keep getting better. Anyway, so I had no clue, man. No idea. Just went out, studied the charts, found a place to set up, and went from there. I didn't book any fishing charters with anybody to figure out spots. I didn't figure to do any of that stuff. I just went and did it. And that's what is so rewarding, is that I just went and did it and then figured it out from there. This worked, that worked that night. But I got to tell you what, the next week I went out and those fish were gone. They were out. They were out of there. So, which happens after the mutton spawn. So they spread out and they move, and fish have fins, they swim, and then I heard everybody bitching about it, and that's the great thing about fishing, man. It's one day it's like, oh, unbelievable, you think you can walk on water, and then next week, man, you get your ass handed to you. So that's just how it rolls. So it was very special because we meaning Melinda and I were we were very on a very tight budget, and we were not able to go out to eat very often, or in our groceries. We were very we had to be very tight as far as what we spent. So because every last cent we made went to Good Karma Sport Fishing. So we it was very nice to be able to put some fresh fish in the fridge that night for us, and have future meals and all that good stuff. So it was cool because we were eating a lot of frozen pizzas and stuff. So, but anyways, so that was my first mutton spawn, and it was very special because I did learn some things that night, and man, I caught some gorgeous fish. Man, it was awesome. And you know what I really liked is that it was easy, super easy. One block of chum and a limit of muttons. and I didn't lose any leads. So because didn't have any leads because I was chumballing. So, but I thought I'd share that with you guys. So that was my first mutton spawn experience. And to be honest with you guys, I didn't really know much about how to target them at all. So at all, I didn't know any sort of movements. I didn't know anything really about those fish. So I was still in the learning process. Yeah, I just kind of went with it. So, and it was I do remember that spawn more than any of them. And I've had some amazing days, some mutton fishing, spawn, no spawn, off off moon, catch them all the time. Just a matter of figuring out, tracking them down, hunting them down, and yeah. So for me, the mutton spawn is every day, all the time, and that's fishing in general. So that's how I look at it. If I'm looking at a particular day to go target certain species, I'm all in. And I tell my clients they got to be all in as well because everybody needs to be on the same page. You can't be switching things up. You can't be going dolphin fishing and going doing this and that and other. So that's where most guys screw themselves, is that they want to do too much while they're out there. So if guys are like, that's the biggest thing I hear from people is that, oh, I want to go dolphin fishing this weekend. I don't know what I'm going to do. And if you want to go dolphin fishing, go dolphin fishing. Do what your gut's telling you to do. And if you don't get them, you don't get them. Stop and make a drop. I mean, take an electric reel with you. Figure out some places to drop. Be committed to fish all day. If you're only committed to fish 4 hours, you're missing out on the second part of the day, especially in the summer, because you might get a morning bite, but typically in June it's a late afternoon bite. 2 o'clock is when the dolphin typically will show up. It depends on when the weeds are setting up. So when the tides and all that other good stuff's happening. So you really gotta stay in tune with that. So I really encourage you guys to make the most out of your time out there. And one way you could do that is you can download the Good Karma Sport Fishing app. You can you can go to the lunar forecast. You can figure out where the major and minor feeding times are at, and really start learning that and start getting into start figuring it out and making it part of your routine to check that. It's like you get up in the morning, you check the tides. Number one, you get up in the morning, check the tides. 2, you check the solar lunars, and then you check the barometer drops every day. So every day there's a high. You have a rise in pressure and a fall in pressure. So you guys need to know when that kind of stuff happens. So when's the pressure going to drop? That may spark a bite. That usually happens around 2 o'clock. When is that sun angle going to get right? Think about it. All that stuff comes into play. And being totally committed to what you're doing is, you got to be committed to it, okay? So let's say, for example, is that you're going to go out and you're going to go wreck fishing and the current's ripping. I highly suggest you stick with it. I really do, because you're going to learn a little bit. If you're trying to learn, fishing a ripping current is a good thing to learn. So just don't abandon it. So, oh, the current's moving too quickly. You can do that down the road once you've learned how to fish a heavy current. Okay, learn how to time it. Learn how to hit those spots. Okay, so instead of just throwing your hands up in the air, said, moving on. So you can do that once you've mastered or are confident that you can catch a fish in a 3-mile-an-hour current in 300 foot of water or 450 foot of water, 600 foot of water. Once you catch a few fish out there, then you can move on, learn something else, and you can pick whether you want to go do that or not. So, but by doing that, you've learned something. Okay, don't just throw your hands in the air and say, oh, I'm not going to do it because the current's moved too fast. Or wind against tide, chumming, anchoring. A lot of guys won't do it because they think it's too hard, or it's like they don't want to fight it. But I got to tell you what, when that current's ripping to the north and you have a wind and the wind's blowing from the north, and you get that boat angle just right, you are going to destroy some fish. And a lot of guys just give up because they haven't prepped accordingly. So I'm going to give you guys a couple little tips that I've learned, that how you can fish a north wind against tide, a northeast wind, an east wind. So here's, I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about this in the future, but this particularly has to do with chumming, okay? On a strong, I'm honest to God, when that current is ripping to the north and you have a north wind, those fish are going to be ferocious. Black groupers, big yellowtails, you just got to fish it correctly, and you got to be prepared. So you have to anchor, okay, which is very important. And the guys that know how to chum. So here's what I do that I've learned, and I'm going to give you a little bit of a tip with this. Is what I do, and I call this this is a little troubleshooting tip for you guys. I call this double trouble. That's wind against tide, and when the water temperature is colder. Okay, now when the water temperature is colder, and I'm doing this now because I want you guys to want this to sit in your brain for when we do get into that, because those cold situations, which is coming. So summer's going to go by quickly, and we're going to be in the fall again. So summer's just a moment in time, and it's good fishing. But I am already starting to look ahead to this winter and how I'm going to attack fishing. So, and then my whole thing is I'm trying to get you guys to think ahead, think ahead, think ahead, and by putting some of this stuff in your brain to help you guys. So I'm going to start to you guys. I'm going to talk about, I call it double trouble. This is wind against current. Wind against current is what I call double trouble. It can be a major headache, especially when the water temperatures are cold. Now, I consider colder water temperatures to be 60 to 70 degrees, like 70 degree range, low 80s, like 80 degrees, somewhere around there, 79. That's what I consider colder water. Now, what you guys might think colder water is, I don't know. But I'm just telling you what I call cold because my lingo is a little different. Now, I found that wind against tide situations during the month of December, they're going to yield some big yellowtail, okay? And the black groupers are going to be mixed in, but you're going to have to do a lot of prep work for this. So how do you do it, okay? Now, first I want you to watch the forecast and prepare at home. Now, I often get asked about watching the forecast and shit. Now, I know when that tide, I'm always predicting a north tide, a northeast tide. And also, this can be for like this summer too. If you're going to try to anchor fish and you have a strong north tide and you have the winds out of the northeast or east, this is something that I want you guys to do as well. But it really helps a lot in the winter. So you got to get your chum flowing. And what happens is in the wind is that it likes to knock the chum down. Okay, it likes to beat it up, because a lot of guys take that block of chum out in the morning and they go to the truck and then they go to the boat and they put it in the water, and then you have wind against tide, and it turns out to be the tide is light that morning. Let's say the tide's like moving half a knot and your chum's not working. Okay, your chum's not working. Your oil's not dissolving. You're like, oh shit, what do I do? So I start planning ahead, okay? I start looking at the wind the 2 days before my trip. I'm always thinking, like for example, if I'm on a trip and I'm like looking at towards the end of the trip, I'll look at the weather for the next 2 days and be like, oh shit. So I got to start planning my chum for 2 days ahead and what I'm going to do as far as prepping it goes. So let's say, for example, I know for a fact that the pattern has been a wind at a half a knot, to the north against a strong northeast tide. I know that getting chum to move with that is going to be a problem. So what do? I double up my soft chum, my secret soft chum mix, and you can go and you can purchase that as a in my courses as far as how I make the soft chum. It makes a huge difference. I don't like to use sand. I use some other fine stuff that drive fish crazy, and I have to have that in that situation, because man, if I didn't, I would be screwed. And I have to be ready to drop chum balls, because if I'm not ready to drop chum balls and I have a light tide, there's no way I can get that bait down to them. So you got to be ready to drop chum balls. So you got to do some prepping. Okay, you got to start like working and starting to get ready. And that's the whole process of fishing, okay, is getting ready and planning. So that's what you need to do. That's going to set you apart. You're going to set yourself apart from the other guy that didn't prep and doesn't catch shit. So what I do when I got a wind, when I know I might have a wind against tide situation, is the first thing I do is I get a starter block out and I start the thawing process. I do this by, what that does is my starter block is set out overnight, and that allows the fish oils to start doing their thing. Okay, so the oil dissolves first and then the rest of the shit follows. Now, these blocks have been kept in blast freezers, and some of them are hard as rocks. And if you're using tournament green, that stuff is nasty, man. some of the blocks are really nice and some of them are really bad. So they're going to thaw out slower than other brands right now. This is what I'm seeing. So what I suggest you guys do is to get that tournament green ready is that you really need to like thaw it out for at least 12 hours, like at least like 6 hours before you go to bed. And like if you're sleeping 6 hours, put it out the night before, and then let that stuff start to dissolve, and do it inside your house in the air conditioning. Don't set it outside. And then, you know, I'm thankful that I got a nice wife that lets me do that shit. So typically it's wrapped in plastic so it doesn't stink. And then what I'll do is I'll wake up in the morning. Like I said, I set it out for 6 hours overnight. Next, as soon as I get up in the morning, I start staging the rest of the blocks outside, and I start getting them to thaw and get the oils released. Okay, so with chumming, the oil brings in the fish, and the particles within the chum keep the fish there. So just always keep that in mind. Now I use the starter block first because it's been thawed long enough, and that really gets the fish, the oils going, it gets the chum in the water, and it brings the fish to the boat quicker. So, and then from there, I start putting the rest of those blocks that I had staged out, and they've already started to thaw. So there you go. And also too, I keep them outside of an insulated cooler because I want the blocks to continue to thaw. Okay, when I'm in a wind against tide situation. Now you got to make sure you have the extra batches of soft chum. Very critical because you're more than likely going to have to drop chum balls to get down to yellowtails and to the mutton snappers and to the groupers. So that's what I recommend. I actually found that fishing in December on colder, windy mornings, they actually produce better catches for me than during the spring spawn. To be honest with you guys, not to mention the grouper fishing was badass when I do this. It makes easy pickings, like dropping grouper bombs in the north wind. The fish are underneath the yellowtail schools, so it's pretty badass. So, like I said, the oil thaws first, and then the chunk. So by setting it out overnight, the oil thaws out, and then the chum releases nicely, and then the natural rocking of the back and forth of the boat gets the chum to gets the chum particles to move. But like I said, it's critical that you guys really, really, really make the soft chum critical, especially if you plan on fishing a wind against tide situation. Now, just remember that not all blocks contain the consistent amount of fish oil, so I highly recommend that you add, get some decent fish oil. So I'll talk about that in the future, but you can buy a gallon of fish oil, fill a spray bottle. You can add it manually. You can put it in an IV bag. You can juice just dump a little bit in your chum slick. Wind against tide, man, you got to be ready. You got to do the work. Just remember that what I said about the oil, okay, very important, is that your chum has a lot of good oil, okay? So if it's not getting the oil released and your slick isn't moving, you got a problem with your chum. So you may not have got the right oil into it. You may have got a really bad batch of chum. Again, this shit isn't pharmaceutical grade, so just keep that. And what you can do too is you can chunk. So go to the Key Largo fisheries and buy I think they sell a 45-pound box of frozen sardines and frozen herring. And what you can do is set out that herring. Herring has a lot of oil in it, and so does sardines, and you can chunk that. Chunking is awesome. I used to do a lot of chunking when I first started, but it's been tough for me as far as freezer space goes and what I do. So I still do some chunking on a wind against tide, but not as much as I did. In fact, I did some really nice chunking a couple weeks ago. I had some excess herring that I had bought at the Yellow Bait House, and I was like, yeah, I'm going to cut a lot of this up and chunk. And yeah, it worked out well, man. I had some nice mangrove snappers in the slick and got them in, and we caught some big yellowtails. We caught a black grouper, and yeah, so chunking works. I'm gonna leave you with one more tip, and if you're marking fish on a wreck and they're not biting, come back later on at night. There you go. Try a different time of day. Solar, lunar. Just mentioned it again. That's how important it is. That's all I got for today, guys. I got to roll. Thanks for tuning in. Follow me on Instagram, goodkarmasportfishing_FL_key. Make sure you guys check out my courses. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys that have purchased the courses, joining up to the private Facebook group, and the guys that are in the Good Karma Sport Fishing rigging crew. Badass group of guys looking for knowledge. This is really cool. I look forward to that group once a month. The cost of that group is $49 a month. And this month we're going over deep dropping. So that's all I got. Thanks for tuning in. And remember, anytime you're fishing, it's all good. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.